right, everybody. We're back. It's now week 10, I believe. So there's only 5 weeks to go. Today we're going to talk about memorable experiences. That's the title of chapter 8. But I want to just talk about the midterm. The midterm test went fine. There's grades all over the place. Some people did excellent, some people not as much. I've already put together all of the scores. Probably the best thing to do is just to send them out by email. So I've finished evaluating everybody. There's some comments for each person, and the comments are a little bit different. As usual, grammar tends to be an issue, and the length of your answer. Some people are just, you don't have to, it's not exactly 2 minutes, but when some students were only saying maybe 2 or 3 sentences, right? And that's sometimes like 20 seconds. And then another student, talks for 3 minutes, and that's long enough. And you've put together like 30 sentences. That's great. That's enough. Don't think that you're obligated to talk and talk forever just to get an A. That's not the point. Just you need to talk enough that I can tell that you, first of all, comprehend the question and that you're able to express yourself. And if you just give me a couple sentences as your answer, very simply, that's not enough. So those are the 2 things that stood out amongst all of you. Was, first of all, the grammatical errors, serious ones like verb tense, and it's pretty obvious when certain words are missing or added or in the wrong place in a sentence. I tried as best as I could to catch those things. Pronunciation generally was pretty good. A couple people really need to fix their microphone or their volume. If you don't speak clearly or your equipment doesn't allow me to hear you, it's very difficult for me to, not give you not a bad grade just because your microphone doesn't work very well. But if I can't hear you well, I can't judge you properly. So I can't give you an A if I can't hear you properly. So a few people on your midterm, you're going to get that feedback is like, I'm mentioning it because it needs improvement. I know it's a bummer to spend money on a microphone or speakers or something like that, or earphones, earbuds, but it's basically necessary. I know you're saving some money if you're at home doing it remotely, so hopefully you'll be able to use it for other things too. But it's really important that I'm able to hear you clearly. Some students are just, it's not my equipment. I know that because, I had 80 interviews and there's only maybe 4 or 5 students that have serious, problems with their equipment, but it should be fixed. Okay, now the next thing I want to mention before we talk about the topic today, of course, we're 4 classes. We have 4 classes left and then the exam after this one, which means I need you to do, there's going to be one more homework assignment that I get you to do, plus a presentation. So the homework assignment will be fairly small, but it's going to be, I have to figure out how it's going to work to make it easy for you to do. But hopefully we might end up even doing some sort of thing on Zoom instead. But for now, definitely I need you to do a presentation. Every semester since I started here, we've done presentations. Presentations are hard. This is hard. Every time I do this, every Saturday and Sunday this semester, I've spent all day recording. That's not how I like to spend my Sunday. I would rather go to campus and see you in person. It's much more comfortable to lecture, but instead I have to do it like this. Anyway, I'm pretty comfortable with my mistakes and with my process and my organization and my preparation. So I don't feel nervous when I do it, but I still sometimes feel like I could have done better. Obviously, sometimes lectures go well, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the organization starts to fall apart sometimes, and sometimes you miss things that are important. And in very rare occasions, professors make mistakes. Very rarely though, as you know. And that's part of being able to do a good presentation, is not being too concerned that it isn't perfect. Certainly experience, there's no substitute for experience. So if it's your first time doing a presentation, you're going to have some problems probably. It's just like the interview. Some people, get comfortable fast, and some people don't feel that nervous, but regardless, practice makes everybody improve. So you're gonna have to record yourself, and you can just do it on your phone. You can do it with your webcam, and you can do it with your phone. But again, the voice is the most important thing. I don't care if you, look at me. I don't care if you shave or you don't shave, or you dress up nicely or you don't. It's certainly impressive. I've seen students take things very seriously in terms of they dress well, they put on their makeup, and they clean up very nicely, and then they, very carefully deliver their presentation. That's impressive. And it has nothing to do with the clothing. It has to do with the demeanor. But I'm not going to wear pajamas and do my lecture. So you have to dress up to a certain extent, and you have to prepare yourself mentally in order to do it. For you, I usually have to restart my lectures a couple times, so you probably will too. You might even do your whole presentation and then start over again. But I'm only asking for 5 minutes, okay? You don't have to do 25 minutes every week like me. So you certainly can record 5 minutes and then say, okay, that one didn't go well, I'll start again and do 5 minutes over. Some people kind of edit and put them together. I'm not gonna be too picky about that as long as the editing is good, but it doesn't look good if you chop things into 5 pieces and just stick them together, and then they're not connected somehow. It's just you talking, and then all of a sudden you stop mid-sentence and start talking somewhere else. So if you don't want to deal with the technical stuff, just run the video, do your presentation for 5 minutes, and that's it. Don't do anything fancy. But some students do editing. The reason I don't do editing for my lectures, I would like to have like bubbles in the corner and graphs and stuff like that, but it just takes too much time. I don't have enough time to make, I don't have 5 hours to make each lecture, right? I have 7 classes. So, I only have an hour or two to do my lectures and upload them each week. So I don't do very much editing at all. Most of what you see is just me talking, and there's some clipping at the ends usually. Sometimes I restart a couple times and I clip, 1 minute off the beginning. And I put, that opening book thing with my photograph from like 10 years ago. That's all I do for each week in terms of editing. And I don't expect you to do anything more than that. It's going to be due May 25th. So I'm giving you the notice now. You have 3 weeks. I know your midterms are just finished, so you probably don't want to record your presentation now, so don't, You got 3 weeks, but I'm just letting you know, 3 weeks from now, I want you to hand it in. That's the deal. 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks from Tuesday, okay? And I will talk about it more next week, because next week, actually, the topic is about doing presentations. So I'm going to talk, that's the whole lecture. So I've talked about it enough for today. That's not today's topic, but now you know. Next week, I will explain how to approach presentations and what I think is really important in preparation, and what the evaluation is going to be like for you. I'll explain that next week. Okay, so May 25th, that's when you have to send me your video. If your video is too big, then you have to share it using a cloud or, some drive, save it on giving me access to it, Google Drive or Naver or iCloud or whatever. Okay, so memorable experiences. You may notice that some of these topics overlap a little bit. That's okay. We're trying to improve conversation skills, interview skills, presentation skills here. And, part of being a good speaker is having, facility and flexibility with language. So what I mean by facility is that the words are at your disposal. You can put words together and sentences together to make paragraphs and conversations without preparing beforehand and without reading. There were a few students who were reading or reciting. It's the only difference really between reciting and memorizing and reading is that I can see your voice goes at a different pace when you read, and your eyes are tracking. You can't do that, or I can't give you a grade. That's considered cheating in the interview. Now, I think some students didn't really realize that they couldn't have some notes. Okay, so some people were kind of glancing down and looking at their notes, and I didn't take off very many points for that. But some people were there was a few students that were literally reading off a piece of paper somewhere or off their screen. When I ask you a question and then you click on your screen, that's pretty suspicious. Like, come on, I'm an old guy. I wasn't born yesterday. It's pretty easy for me to imagine what it would be like to be an undergrad student studying a second language, because I did it. I took French in university, and if I had been at home talking to my professor and I had the opportunity to write down, I wouldn't have done it because my French writing was terrible. But if it had helped, I would have been tempted to do it. But you can't, okay? Hopefully, we will have the final interviews in my office, and you will come in here in person, and I will be able to, give you a face-to-face interview like we typically do. It's much more comfortable for the interviewer as well when you have a face-to-face meeting, because the body language and everything on Zoom is not the same. It's like a talking head. So when you come in and you sit down and you see me as a real person, you're like, this is a professor, not this head that talks to me through my screen all the time. I think for some people it might make you nervous, but for some people it's just like, well, this is another human being, not somebody judging me digitally judging me, right? So anyway, for the presentation, obviously you're allowed to have notes, but you still can't read a script, okay? Reading a script is not allowed. In the interview, you're supposed to have no cues. You're supposed to be, when you walk through that door and you have paper in your hand, I tell the students, put away your phone, put away your paper, and talk to me. Because that's what an interview is. There is no supplementary material permitted. Okay, so for this topic, like some of the other ones that we did, actually, I don't think we have done. Oh, the luck question. The last question, which I didn't ask very many people because it was kind of a tough one compared to the others. Endangered animals, cities, vacations, jobs, these were all kind of descriptive answers. So they were all kind of similar. And the introduction, your self-introduction was also just describe yourself, basically. When I asked some people tell me about a time that you were lucky or unlucky, they had to put together a story, right? So obviously what you're going to need is the facility, related to grammar. You're going to have to be able to. This is what I lack in Korean and to a certain extent in French too. My grammar's not very good. You need to be able to put your words in the past tense, right? So if you're talking about a story, you're going to have to use the past tense, and sometimes you're going to have to use variations of the past tense. So for example, you're going to have to use the past continuous, right? So if something's happening in the past at that time in the past, right? I was walking with my sister. We were walking on an old bridge, right? I was playing Nintendo. We were sitting in the living room. It doesn't matter. This is for situations just like we use the continuous in the present. Like if it's happening at the time. If you're talking about a story and at that time something was happening in the past, that's when you use the past continuous, okay? It's not that hard once you get used to it. We do it a lot, okay? That's, in Koreans, as far as I know, Koreans don't use that tense. So it's we put ing on everything, right? What are you doing? That's the question, ing. I am lecturing. Just put ing on the verb. It's not that hard. So the past continuous is not that hard either. Just take the form of the past continuous. To form the past continuous, take the past tense of the verb with the main verb plus, right? That's it. I was walking. So you've got the past tense of the verb, and then you've got the main verb plus ing, right? In the negative, you just, of course, you just add not in between the two, the past tense and the main verb. So I wasn't watching where I was going. They weren't watching the movie. I wasn't playing Nintendo. We weren't sitting in the living room. What were you doing this afternoon? I wasn't playing Nintendo. Why did you say you weren't playing? Because that's what my mom was going to accuse me of. So we're talking about these things in the past, right? Here's a example in the textbook, page 93. There's a great example. There's a paragraph here. My sister and I were walking over an old bridge near our house. I wasn't watching where I was going. There's the negative, right? I fell off the bridge into the river. I remember I was wearing red plastic sandals. I remember that I saw those red plastic sandals and the blue sky as I was falling. Again, there's another past continuous, right? As I was falling, right? So this thing is happening at the moment. I was falling at that time. My sister didn't see me fall, okay? That's the regular past tense. She continued walking over the bridge. She continued walking over the bridge and talking to me. Luckily, there were some people who were swimming, past continuous, in the river. At the same time, there were people in the river. They saw me fall in and rescued me, okay? So you're using the past simple for when something happens in the past by itself, and then something happening at the same time or at that time, you're using the continuous, past continuous, okay? That's a really good paragraph to take a look at if you want to figure out how to do the grammar correctly. The pictures right there, the pictures on page 91, they correspond to that paragraph on page 93, okay? So you can look at the pictures and you can see what happened. You can put them in order. Obviously, this is one of the most important parts about answering this question well, is that you got to think about something that happened that you remember, and then you have to put it in order. And then you have to make sure your grammar has been changed to match the sequence of events. Okay, so they start off, actually, the reason I didn't start off on the first page of this chapter is because they're not talking about grammar, tense, order, which are I think they're more important parts to remember when you're talking about answering this question well. But they talk about emotion on the first page. I was angry, exhausted, scared, thrilled, embarrassed, nervous, surprised, worried. All descriptive adjectives about people's emotions. The reason that they did this is because usually the things that you remember have some emotional significance to them. It's a kind of a reason for your brain to retain that information, you know? So it can be a positive emotion or a negative emotion. It doesn't really matter, although we seem to, have stronger memories for a certain level of trauma, for example. But sometimes when it's too scary, you block it out. The memory, you don't have access to that memory because it was too intense. But generally, if you had an intense experience, an intense emotional experience when you were young, that experience was filed away, if I can use a computer metaphor or office metaphor. It was retained in your brain in order for you to learn something, right? For example, if you broke your arm when you were in kindergarten, I've never broken a bone, thankfully, so far. I shouldn't say that, knock on wood. Hopefully keep that streak going. I've ripped lots of muscles. I'm very good at that. But I've never broken a bone. I've lost a tooth, a fake tooth. I can remember that. The tooth thing didn't happen until I was 32, maybe 31. 7 or 8 years ago, I got a tooth knocked out playing sports. And I can remember that like it was yesterday. Yeah, the balls, flew into my face and just the tooth flew into the air and broken right off, and the wind was whistling through the hole. It was a really rainy, cold day for soccer, and I got my tooth knocked out with a soccer ball, believe it or not. A hard soccer ball, but a soccer ball. And I could describe what was happening, who was there. I remember who was playing with me, and I remember where it was and what the weather was like and all that kind of stuff. Similarly, the story about the boy is, this is presumably an adult. It's Tim's childhood memory. So he's talking about this experience on falling into the water in the bridge, and he can remember it clearly, the whole, not just a memory. Like sometimes you remember things and you kind of have this fuzzy picture of what happened. But for this question, you've got to have like a clear memory of a sequence of things that happened, right? Not all day. It should be a memory, that it happens over, like my example, getting my tooth knocked out. That happened over, it suddenly happened in 10 seconds, but the whole memory is kind of, something like 5 minutes long. That's not a childhood memory though. So that I shouldn't use that one because I'm an adult. You don't have to be that young. Some people don't remember very well. My father's one of them. He can't remember anything before he was almost 10. You may not have any very clear memories until you're, at the end of elementary school. That might be the case. It doesn't matter. I will choose my, just for a quick example, this one will be quick. I know sometimes my stories are not quick, but for a quick example today, I was trying to think of what would be the first memory I have from my childhood, and as far as I remember, the thing I can remember the clearest, the earliest clear memory I have is before I went to kindergarten. So I guess I was Korean age 6 and Canadian age 4. Is that right? No, Korean age 5, Canadian age 4. Okay? I don't know the Korean ages very well. Anyway, I'm 39 in international age, and I was 4 at the time. So 35 years ago, it was the summer before school started. So I was almost 5. So I probably was Korean age 6. The kindergarten teacher, my future kindergarten teacher, came to my house to visit to do a pre-kindergarten interview. So she came in, and she was short, but I didn't think she was short because I was small. But she was short, and she had very long hair, long brownish blonde hair that went right down her back, and she had a dress on, and she had a very kind face, and she had a bag. That's what I remember most about this memory, is that she walked in the door and she had a bag. She said, can you show me your room? So I took her upstairs to my bedroom, and she had this bag that was covered in buttons and clips and zippers and pockets. And there was something in every pocket and under every button. It was just Velcro snaps and buttons. And it was just a very interesting bag for a kid. It looked like it had just toys and colored pencils and markers and crafts sticking out all over it. So she had this magical bag that she had, and she started pulling things out of it, and she asked me to count to, how high can you count? And I counted up to 100, and she said, oh, that's really good. Although that's normal in Korea, but in Canada at the time, she thought that was impressive. And, she checked I couldn't read yet. I didn't learn to read until I was grade 1, so that wasn't an issue. She didn't really care about my reading, but we talked about what I liked, my hobbies, what games I like to play, and talked about my family, and she showed me all kinds of cool things on her bag, and then she left. And I don't remember everything about the interview, just remember that bag being cool and counting to 100 especially, and when she first came in the door. So that's basically what I want. That took me about 2 minutes to describe, and something like 20 sentences, between 10 and 20 sentences. Basically, if you guys, any of you are in composition class, it's kind of like, it's almost like a paragraph. When you give a good answer to an interview question, you're not doing a paragraph, you don't need a topic sentence, but I'm just saying, you need an order, and your sentences need to be connected, and it needs to be about the same length as a paragraph, right? That's why the homework was useful, because all of you did all your homework. Every single person did their homework except for one person one time. We had like 99.9% completion rate on the homework, which is the highest I've ever had. So all of you know how to do this. So you need to get confidence, and remember, you can't read your homework and it doesn't have to be the same as what you did for the first 5 weeks, okay? Now, next week, we'll take a break from the topics. There'll be no new topic, and I will talk to you about your presentations so that you can get them ready for me on May 25th. By May 25th. You should probably do it before the last day. I would recommend it, okay? All right, that's it for week 10. Thank you for listening, and talk to you next week.